Things I'm going to show you are not beautiful and not nice, but important to know. And some of them might be boring, and I do not take any liability for the nightmares, headaches, or injuries caused during this session, and I'm not joking, right? So privacy, huh? Sounds like the most exciting thing ever. Well, it's actually really fascinating. When I look at the web, and where most people that I interviewed look at the web, they don't like the web. Some of them even hate the web, because this is the web that we're creating. How did we get here to this point? This is not a great user experience. We coin ourselves as user experience designers, but we're creating these experiences which are just opposite of great user experience. You just want to read an article and have pop-up with a newsletter box, with a cookie prompt, with a few pop-ups along the way, right? This is not a great user experience, and it's actually really quite everywhere, right? But sometimes it's just bad usability, of course. So imagine you want to buy a ticket to go to a cinema. There's nothing wrong about this idea of buying a ticket. So this is one from Madrid. So you end up with a pop-up, and of course, the video doesn't play. That's weird. So you click it away, you close the window, and it opens in a new tab. How gentle and nice that is. And then you come back, trying to close it again, and it opens again in a new tab, right? And this is just remarkable. And if you actually do take an effort to actually buy that ticket, this is the interface you're presented with, right? Please check that the date, film date session, the time information shown above is the one you have selected for a movie ticket, and so you will not be able to make changes to the funds until the purchase is finished, right? And all those things with a button that you're supposed to click to buy something. Or even better, this is a boat configurator company called Marine. Like beautiful, beautiful video and all of that. And you end up really maybe thinking, oh, I want that boat now, right? Oh, this looks really, really nice. I want that boat. So you click on Build My Sessa, and usually this is how it's going to work, right? You start selecting what you want to build, maybe a preset, right? So you've chosen a model, and you might be willing to pay maybe $1 million for this. And what they're giving you half a carousel, not even a full carousel, half a carousel, 2 hamburger icons for the price of one in the top left corner, right? And you start clicking, trying to make sense of this stuff, right? And this is everywhere. This kind of interface is everywhere. And then you realize, there is a hide summary checkbox I can click. Yes! But then as you scroll down, it appears again, right? And it's just so frustrating, so disrespectful in so many ways, right? And even worse than that, this is a bank insurance company from Germany. And they ask a couple of questions as you're signing up for the form. And one of the questions is, do you have children? Right? And at this point, you must think, I mean, there must be a designer sitting somewhere in front of Adobe XD, Photoshop, or Sketch, or anything, right? And thinking, do you have children, huh? Slider. It has to be a slider. And the thing is about the slider, it has a minimum value and a maximum value. And the minimum value is kind of obvious because it's hopefully going to be 0. But the maximum value has to be defined. And luckily, developers made a decision of what the maximum value is, because the maximum value is 5. If you happen to have 6 children, or you're planning to have 6 children, let's say, there is a way out. There is a way out. You can click on the pencil icon. Then this beast turns into an input field, which you can change. Right? And then if you type in 7, of course, the interface will tell you, 5, right? But this is so, we're laughing about this, but this is such a horrible state of things. And I'm not even talking about the more, bad things. Like this is a site I will never forget. Now, if you don't like bugs or insects, please close your eyes now. It's not going to look nice. Now, this is a configurator for a tool that allows you to kill insects, right? And so can you imagine for a second how a designer sits somewhere in front of a laptop and thinking, a little bit more blue, or a little bit more red, right? And we go to these extremes, and we create this let's create a configurator. Because who doesn't like to have a configurator with a bug on it, on the slider? How often do you see that in your life? That's just unbelievable. And the best part about it, when this came up, you have to ask a couple of questions. Where have the bugs invaded? Obviously everywhere. And then boom, you have the final result. This is what you're going to get. And the best part about it, when it actually started coming out, is they have exactly 1 product to sell, right? But it's still a great configurator to have, right? Now, some of you also might be familiar with this wonderful company. Oh, right? Well, they redesigned, but I'm like an elephant. I never forget. I never forget. Because they had this thing, when you buy a flight, book a flight with Ryanair, the insurance is added in for you automatically unless you know how to opt out. But to opt out, you actually do need to know how to opt out, because to opt out, you need to find Don't Insure Me, conveniently located between Denmark and Finland. Right? And this is just the state of things, and it's actually a very safe state of things, right? And if we look further, you see this happening all the time, this new Instagram ads showing up, right? And so because people don't like to have hair or dirt on their phone, right, they just Photoshop the hair to increase engagement, right? And it actually worked fairly well. And then somebody said, we can do better. Let's add some dirt on a banner. Can you see? That's not what was supposed to happen. OK, so it works now again. Let's take a look at the dirt here and make sure that people actually notice it, right? And then, of course, we entered a new era of beautiful web design, the push notifications. My meeting would like to send you notifications. There are two great options. You might not want to stay alive, or you allow, and I've been tracking the work done by this wonderful company. And of course, they must have run an A/B test or something, because in the B version of the test, they decided that it's probably a better conversion. Right? And it's everywhere. And it's actually so sad, and we're laughing about this, because this is just horrible, but we all kind of take it, right, in a way. So as we browse the web, we just OK, whatever, I'm just going to click it away, right? But actually, on a much smaller scope, it happens as well. Like whenever you go to Facebook and they have this little red notification, right, kind of indicating that there is something, and we're almost, it's almost like a psychological trick, right? So I've never been to the watch section, but they tell me that there's some notifications waiting for me, right? And all those notifications actually are really, really horrible and horrendous. You look at Booking.com, right, and you see most of you have seen this in high demand and all of that. And if you look what's happening behind the scenes, it's horrendous. It really is, because there is a JSON file which randomly combines the names, the products, the images, the visuals at the random times. So it creates this illusion of somebody buying at the same time. These people do not exist, right? And it's everywhere. So when I started running these interviews, I was really shocked because of the way how people perceive the web. And specifically, of course, for a long time, I thought that it's just me. It's just me blocking Facebook and taking care of privacy and trying to block tracking and all those things. And I realized that it's not just me. One thing that was really interesting when it showed up was all these privacy notifications, right? Anybody read it in the entirety, at least once in their life? One person, two? So for this year, I decided to do two things. Every time somebody sends me a link to a new tool, a new service, or anything, I'm going to take the time to read the entire privacy policy, not because I'm a freak. And don't get me wrong, I'm not this kind of person who is installing Tor and blocking everything that's only possible, right? I just really wanted to understand the scope of privacy UX at this point, right? And when I started looking deeper, I was shocked, because so many things are hidden in such a horrendous way as well. Like terms and privacy policy on WhatsApp, right? You can either agree, you can click here and read more about the key updates, and only then you get that checkbox where you can select if you want to share your data or not. Kind of hidden away so it's not easy to spot. F-Secure is a netlink operator. They set up Wi-Fi's, maybe even one of those here. And in their terms and conditions, they have a Herod clause where you agree to assign your firstborn child to them for the duration of eternity, right? Because nobody reads these terms and conditions, so people can write whatever they want in them. Right? You go further than that, you'll find a lot of interesting things. Anybody using Amazon? Probably. Amazon's web service terms are an incredible piece of design. You can print it out, and you'll spend approximately 8.5 hours reading it. That's no fun to read, because most parts you will not understand at all, because they're all legalese and totally unclear, to me at least. But then if you scroll far enough, to point 56.7 or 57.7, you'll find out an incredible section, which is also called the zombie apocalypse clause, where they restricted the use of their tools in the event of the occurrence of a widespread viral infection transmitted via bites of contact with bodily fluids that causes human corpse to reanimate and seek to consume living human flesh, blood, brain, and nerve tissue, and is likely to result in the fall of organized civilization. Because one of the things that they're building is also an engine, a game engine for building zombies, virtual zombies. But if it's used at some point to actually build real zombies, they're not liable. Right? And all those things kind of started to really freak me out a little bit. Anybody heard of this wonderful tool? Face app, anybody used it? Now, did you read the privacy policy before using it? I did, right? And it's horrible. It's just so bad. Not only you give all access to the information you're submitting, they can use this information in any way they like, in any products they're going to develop in their lifetime, and you're not going to get paid for it. And of course, more than that, they also can give this data away to third parties and fourth parties and sell it on your behalf without actually giving you any money. Isn't that nice? Isn't that surprising, actually? That all these things show up, right? And sometimes the interface is not that great, and sometimes the upload button is not that great, but the privacy policy is always 50 pages long. That really freaks me out, right? Now, when we look into it in a bit more detail, we'll find out a few other things as well, right? Specifically, when these things start showing up, people start fighting back. Now, when YouTube was serving ads with CPU-draining cryptocurrency miners for somebody else while you were watching videos, right, there was a big boom for people actually started using things like ad blockers. Anybody using ad blockers? Yeah, well, it's actually becoming a very, very common thing. It's not just us using them. It's really becoming a mainstream thing. Right? And of course, I remember a couple of years ago, there was a big push of advertising industry against ad blockers, saying that ad blockers are illegal, they should be forbidden by law. Right? But they lost. Right? So ad blockers have been prevailing, but at the same time, you see these tools appearing. Like stop ad blocking on your site now. They try to prevent ad blocking from happening. And when this was released, 1 day later, there was an anti-ad block killer. Right? There is a war happening. Blockers, against ad blockers, against blockers. At this point, this is actually ad blocker. Right? And there are all these tools, right? Adblock Plus and Ghostery. Anybody using Ghostery? You might want to reconsider, because they're also selling, or at least they were known to sell data about what they were blocking to advertising agencies, ad companies, so they make sense of what is being blocked and what not, right? So you have to be careful about that. And all these extensions, which I thought only I use, are becoming mainstream. That's been incredible, right? And so we have this Facebook container, the new kid around the block, stop chat pop-ups blocker, right? And also this one, this is fun. Track this, which essentially opens 100 tabs. So, because Instagram knows quite a lot about you, and Facebook knows quite a lot about you. So it opens 100 tabs, so you can pretend to change your personality to become rich, very rich. It will open Lamborghini and all these ad tracking services there, right? Or influencer, and then all of a sudden you're really screwing the personality that they have about you. Advertisers track this, right? Now you might wonder, okay, so what does it all mean to you or to us, right? Oh, this is also one of my favorite ones. Make Medium readable again. That's fun, right? But when I started kind of looking and diving deeper, I understood quite a few things that were really new to me. So if you think about the user behavior today, like right now, what is the state of things? Well, whenever I get to see a pop-up on modal, block, or click away, right? Whenever somebody wants to send you a push notification, block. Chat window pop-ups, usually block. Install app prompts, block. Importing contacts, block, because we know from our experience with LinkedIn, right, that all of a sudden all our friends were spammed as well. We don't want that, so importing contacts usually block. Video autoplay, block. Somebody wants to get your permission to access the data about where you are, where you're located, block. GDPR cookie consent prompt, okay. Sure, no problem, that's okay, that's fine. Advertising banners usually blocked. Oh, this is a fun one. When somebody asks you to turn off an ad blocker, right, yeah, right. We have two developed, established strategies of dealing with this kind of message, right? You go to an article, and it says, please turn off an ad blocker. What do? Well, we either go in incognito mode, or private window, right? Or we have a special browser dedicated for this kind of things, right? Anybody using one of those strategies? A few people. But turning off ad blocker, no. No way, not doing that. Access to camera, photos, microphone, all blocked. Email input, that's a fun one. Imagine you are at the airport, right, and you want to get on Wi-Fi, and you have 4 options to sign in with. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or email, right? Who would use Twitter to sign in for the Wi-Fi? Not many. Twitter, not many people. Who would use Instagram to sign in? Just as many. Now, Instagram, it's very private. It's precious. We're not going to let them in our Instagram. No way, no way. Who would use Facebook to sign in? Yeah, Facebook is like whatever, right? Now, who would use email? Now, what kind of email would that be, though? Right? Because we don't have just one email. We have a couple. We have a very dedicated email account for all kind of crap, right? Accounts, newsletters. You know, actually, I would love to see a database of all the emails collected in the airport Wi-Fi. It must be creative, like so creative, with people coming up with all kind of emails, right? So getting a proper email from somebody is really hard because people are used to either using fake accounts or creating a new disposable one, right? And it's not just us because we're, the IT people. It's a regular thing, right? The same goes for social sign-in, right? Maybe we'll let them in, maybe we will not, right? Capture, well, what can you do with the capture, right? There is not much you can do there, right? And every now and again, I hear the same thing over and over. Well, I have nothing to hide, right? So, okay, so what if Facebook knows about it? Or what if Instagram or Google knows about things? Anybody in this camp? Right? I think that this is a very dangerous thing to do and to say. For a very simple reason. It's not about having something to hide. It's about protecting something that belongs to you. And it's a very different perspective. Because we never know where our data will land. So this year has been a big year of menstrual surveillance. Right? Where all these apps that let you track your cycles, for example, or if you want to found a family, right? Would you like this data to get out there? To be publicly available to your managers or to your clients or to anybody you're dealing with? This is your data. It belongs to you. It's not anybody else's business, right? And it's not even that. There are many pregnancy apps that actually collect this data, and when you sign up with terms and conditions, they're happy to sell it to the highest bidder. And if that bidder happens to be your manager or the company you're working for, well, then they will know maybe a little bit too much about you, right? The same goes for health insurance. Would you like health insurance to know exactly how often you go to the gym and when you're going and what you're eating and what you're not eating and all of that? So they can adjust the interest rates based on that? Probably not. Anybody had this experience at some point that you're maybe looking at the phone or maybe you're talking to somebody and all of a sudden that topic that you're speaking about with a friend shows up on Instagram 2 minutes later or a month later? Anybody had this experience? Right? This is not a random phantom that's just around us. Because phones are listening all the time, right? Again, if you're using an app, and don't, I'm not a person who says don't use Instagram, don't use Facebook, don't use all of that. But I think it's important to be aware of the impact of data collection and where it kind of leads us, right? So the phone is actually listening. So every time you're using Instagram, you might want to check if they have access to your microphone or not, right? So all those things are really, really important. And I'm not even mentioning things like data breaches and so on and so forth. So when we look back here, I think the most important thing is it's not about having this really urgent sense of privacy. It's about regular things that we tend to value a lot, right? Our data has some values. And I asked myself, how come that Instagram and Facebook and all those wonderful tools we're using, they never had a premium account where you could say, I want to pay, I don't know, $5, and no advertising or tracking? Well, because you can earn much more money by tracking this data and selling the data to highest bidders. So lost in the debate about privacy and the very real day-to-day battles that we all face. So if you are looking for a new job, you don't want your employee to find out that you're looking for a new job before you found it, right? If you're planning to propose to somebody, you don't want them to find out that you're buying a jewelry or anything before you commit it. That's a simple thing. And you want to choose what information to reveal on a dating profile, for example. This is all your prior things that kind of belongs to you. So this shiny new beauty, GDPR, that some of you might have heard of, right, is essentially this new regulation that's coming from the European Union in order to give people control back about how the data is treated. And yes, it's a very dry thing and it's very boring. It's really, really boring to read. But I think it's a very fundamental, very important thing that's going to define for years how we're going to treat the web and our users as well, right? And it's just a start because, there is a Consumer Privacy Act coming to California on January 1st, which is like GDPR light. So as we're designing with privacy in mind, we need to really understand how we deal with data, what data we can collect, and what data we should not collect. And I'm not going to go into details of all of that, of course, but it's all about protecting that personal data and having, and that's very important, privacy being a default. By default, you as a web app or a service are not allowed to collect data without consent. At least coming from the European Union at this point. It's probably going to be a bit different here in the US because we have slightly different understanding of legislation when it comes to privacy and data. But this is an important consideration here. And so what does it mean for us again? When the GDPR thing came up, we started seeing these things, right? I mean, I don't know how often you see them here in the US. Probably not so much. You do, right? So if you go to Europe, every single website will have a horrible, horrible pop-up like this. Now, it's very important to understand that this was not coming from GDPR. This is the way we as designers or developers decided to implement the consent, to get the consent. But this is a fake consent. So you get to New York Times, you can review your cookie policy, and then it doesn't matter what you do here. You can click on I accept, or close, or just use the site, and that's consent. That's not GDPR compliant, right? And I'm really burning for this, not because I'm trying to be overly protective about privacy and all that, but because I think that this is just so wrong on so many levels. It's like it's not even dark patterns. It's just really tricking people into doing something that they desperately don't want to do. And so if we look at these examples, this is what the traditional experience has become, right? This is one coming from Germany where you have different sets of cookies, right? And it's so remarkable because it takes maybe 50 milliseconds to display a relevant ad on Instagram. But here, it takes 2 minutes to set up your settings for cookies and what you care about, what you don't care about, what you would like to share, what you would not like to share, right? And this is just horrendous. And I'm wondering sometimes, how come that some of those settings are activated by default and some are not? So you have to manually opt out from every single one of them. And that's the other thing I was doing this year. I was going, every time I would see this kind of pop-up, I would go to extremes to remove everything, right? And that's extremely painful. Right? Especially if you get to see something like this, right? So on Wise, you go all the way. There is no way to unselect everything. No. You're going to go all the way and unselect every single one of them, right? And this might take really, literally minutes to get it done. Now, again, with this in mind, we need to figure out how we can do things better. One of the really good examples of it is to explain to a customer what happens to the data, what is required, what is not required, right? And what impact it has on the actual user experience as well. And so you have this little slider here, and depending on what you would like to share, you get the information about what kind of experience you're going to get as a result, right? On the other side of things, it's actually quite important to understand that this GDPR is not coming out of nowhere. So this legislation existed since 1995. It's just been renewed last year, specifically 2018, actually. And so it's actually evolving, and what's coming is really, really important and critical. Why? Because right now we see these cookie prompts. It's very unlikely that we're going to see them in a year or two. Because what's happening right now with the e-privacy directive, and it's happening in the US as well, is that the setting to adjust the way the user data will be treated is coming into browser settings. So as you install a new browser, or as you update the browser, you can choose what you want to share. Right? And then this is going to be advertised to websites and to web applications as users use them. And then it's going to be your responsibility as designers and developers to react to what people decided to share and what not. Which means that you might want to have different kind of experiences. Right? Personalization, yes. Or if somebody doesn't want to share any data, no personalization at all. Right? So because people have an option to opt out. I've been in really strange discussions lately. Really strange discussions. Like, for example, if you want to be a doctor, you have to go to school, you have to study, you have to, medicine, you have to practice. To practice, you need to pass an exam and so on. You need to get the license. Doctors need a license to become doctors. Lawyers, the same thing. You need to study, get the license, and then at some point you will be able to, practice law. And so the discussion goes, shouldn't designers and developers having so much responsibility today go to school and get a license, and then to be designers and to be developers, have this license on their wall. Well, this is a really, really strange kind of concept to think about, but this is seemingly where it's all heading, because right now there is no control over data at all. And this is not what I want, for sure. But I want to be in a place where I know what happens with my data, because this is really, really important to me, right? Now, let's take a look at just some patterns to figure out what we can do to make things better. I need maybe just 5 more minutes, and then I'm done. So everybody feeling bad now? Right? I think it's very important to understand the impact of how data is collected. Now, bad patterns, right? Dark patterns. We are really good at designing things, but we're also very good at increasing conversion, right? So if you look at this example, right, we can do this kind of 2 buttons. You can add to basket without insurance, going in the wrong direction, or add with the green button, add to basket with insurance. And nobody needs insurance for the shoes, but we can actually figure out how to sell insurance for shoes. That's not a problem. We know how that works, and it will obviously increase conversion. If you run an A/B test, this will perform much better, right? No wonder about that. But every time we think about A/B testing just to increase conversion, just one metric, we need to think about the other metrics as well, because there are many hidden costs involved too. Right? Dark patterns can help increase conversion right away, but long term, you might be losing customers because they're not going to stick around. Right? And so when we think about a healthy metrics mix, this is what many companies in Europe started doing now. Right? Where we try to look not only conversion rate, but also all the other metrics that kind of make up for the lifetime value or the lifetime experience of a user. Right? At this point, it would be something like time to repeat purchase, recommendation strength, time to first share, time to first purchase, time to first upgrade, these kind of things. And once you bring all these metrics together, only then you have kind of a balanced view of what the experience actually is, right? So it's not just about conversion as a result. Now, every time we ask for some data, we need to be explicit why we need it. So here's an example for an age prompt, right? And on Carlsberg, they will actually ask you for the specific day of your birth only if they need this information. By default, if you say that you're over 18, then you just enter the site, right? But they will show the day and the month only if it's actually necessary to confirm that you're over 18, right? So we can actually ask for information only when we need it, and ask only what needed and not more. Right? Because if you think about something like a birthday, even birthday alone is a very private information that you might want to protect. On the other side, if you need some information from your customers, you need to explain why you need it. Right? So you see these little information toggles. So every time you ask for something like gender or phone number, right, you need to be really cautious about how you ask for this information. Because what many people do when they ask for the phone number, right, because they know that the formatting is probably going to be strict, so you have to have the exact right number of digits. What people tend to do is type their phone number and then remove the last 2 and replace them with some random numbers so people can't call them. Anybody does that? Yeah, I know you a little bit. I've studied you, right? On the other side, it's really fascinating to see what we can do with things like, let's say, email. I have to jump a little bit. Hold on. Sorry. Just a second. Yeah, here, right? Once we get to email, this is fun. So whenever you get to ask an email address, and you have to confirm your email address, right? How many of you would copy-paste the email address when asked to confirm it? Yeah, so approximately 60% of people continuously copy-paste. And I saw these examples where we as designers found a way to make sure that people don't copy-paste. We block copy-pasting, huh? Oh, that's nice and friendly. Right, that's very nice. Right? And then the best example I've ever seen is when you split the confirm email into 2 input fields, the one before @ and the one after @. What do people do? They copy-paste twice. That's not a problem. That's not a problem at all. So 60% of customers consistently copy-paste their email address when asked to verify in the e-commerce checkout, especially on mobile. So when we started working on our e-commerce experience, instead of verifying right away as you actually start checking out, we need to really ask ourselves, where do people care about the correctness of this data? And that's usually right before they purchase something, right when they purchase something. Right? So right before they click that big green button, there's an option to adjust the email address. And once you finish, there is an option to adjust the email address as well. Right? And especially, actually, and that's interesting, whenever you get to this page, the confirmation page, we're very unlikely to just dismiss and close the tab right away, do we? No, no. We linger on this page for a while, right? And maybe we go to our email inbox to check if the confirmation email has arrived. And if it hasn't, within 1 minute, we get panicking. And we start doing this magical thing that everybody does, namely, we take a screenshot, or we maybe save it as PDF because we don't want to be dealing with them, right? Anybody does that? Yes, yes, so I know you fairly well. So if you want to get a proper email address, you really have to think twice about when to ask and how to ask, because it's really hard to get a proper email address. So you really need to think about this. On the other side, the same goes for passwords. Oh, these are beauties, right? Now, of course, many of you will be using password managers, right? But many of you will be using the same passwords for situations when you have to create an account, right? Memorable password, right? So when you think about memorable passwords, on average, people have 4.2 passwords. Now, which passwords are they? Now, there is a Gmail password. Now, that's a good password. Lowercase, uppercase, exclamation mark, comma, hyphens, whatever, you name it, you got it. Good password, Gmail. Facebook password. Lowercase, uppercase, exclamation mark, you remember it most of the time, good password. Online banking, usually shorter, and you remember it, so it's not such a good password, but you remember it. And then there is a fourth password. Yes, this password. If somebody asks you to create an account, you're going to probably use, or many people at least, are going to use that password. Now, what if your password is not good enough for them? Because it's missing some wonderful features, right? Well, then we learned how to deal with it, right? It needs everything. So whenever we get to this point where we're asked to come up with a better password because they feel like we don't have a good enough password, what do? Well, we take our password as a baseline, and then we add or append a couple of characters to match the requirements. Who does that? So why does this exist then, if it doesn't work anyway, right? So one thing that you can do when it comes to passwords is make it easier for people to remember them. So one thing that worked really well is when you have this kind of 4 words that people can remember. 4 random words like honey, jar, carrot cake, known as passphrase, are easier to remember, and they're also better for conversion. So you can use them instead, right? Instead of forcing people into setting up an account and resetting the password and then getting the password recovery routine, right? The only thing to know, though, whenever you write something like this, for example, honey, jar, carrot cake, approximately 0.1% of all people will use that password. So you have to protect your users from doing that as well, right? Now, finally, I want to leave us with something that's a bit more positive. Namely, it is possible to make privacy interesting. Just 2 more minutes, and then I'm really done. It's OK to be experimenting and trying something new and stuff, and I don't want to break everybody down and say this is like everything is horrible, because we can do things. Like anybody likes pop-ups here in the room. I love a good pop-up. So this is the best pop-up in the world. I wish every single website had this pop-up, because it's so annoyingly amazing. It's really difficult to close. But as long as it fits in within the story, that's maybe just fine. That's no problem at all, right? Here's the H prompt, right? So here in the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, you can type in 32nd or 43rd of 1547, and you can still enter the site because, make it easy for people to lie, right? But you can also make it fun. So here in Austin Beer Works, they ask, are you 21? And if you click yes, then you enter the site. No surprises there. If you click no, oh, that's your journey you're going to take. Are you at least 18? Maybe 17? And it's not difficult to build, but you can really play around. And there is no way to close it, by the way. It's just not possible anymore, right? And then you end up with the video that you've chosen, right? And so it's really not difficult to build. And in the end, it's not that privacy is dry and boring and, you can really make it interesting for people to share some information like this. Here's another one. What could be more boring in the entire world than the title? You go checking out, and they ask, what's your title? Mr., Miss, Mrs. You don't have to, restrict yourself to a few options. Go overboard. What would you like to be today, right? You have all these wonderful options, right? And in fact, there are 56 options to choose from. So you can go ahead and explore what you would like to be, right? So all these options are right there. And sometimes even just having a little bit of fun. Loading animations could be just waiting. But it's cute. It's cute to look at. Or even this. This is the final one. You have the subscriber box. Or by default, you automatically opt in our email subscription, right? It's something that people always uncheck and sometimes use the pinky finger on the mobile phone to untap it because it's so tiny and so small, right? So maybe make people click a couple of times to subscribe, like this. Right? And so it becomes kind of this thing. Maybe it's okay to make people click twice or 3 times or 4. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to have fun while also respecting our customers. Now, I want to wrap up, right, just by I think I want to emphasize just one single thing. We can create wonderful experiences. We've learned that. What we haven't learned really is how to adapt the experience based on what people want. This goes for accessibility in the same way like it goes for everything around inclusive design, localization, and recently also privacy. And so privacy is one of those things that actually will have to be discussed and we'll have to figure out it together. Because again, the first implementation of the GDPR is not great, right? Nobody is questioning that. But we can do better than that, and it will be better. And I want to leave you with just one video of an app that I really respect and I like, and I would love to see more applications like that. And when I think about people using the app, I feel about protecting their interests and protecting their data and their privacy, because they cannot sometimes they cannot defend themselves. So we have to.
You might wonder how blind people deal with everyday challenges. Well, normally the answer is simple. We're not that different from you. We play music. We go to school. We go to work. You get the picture. But sometimes the simplest things can be difficult, and we need a pair of eyes.
Connect to first available helper.
That's where you come in.
Establishing video connection.
Through your smartphone, Be My Eyes connects the blind with sighted people through a live video connection. Simply choose if you need help or want to help by the click of a button.
That's a nice picture of you and your family, Caroline. Is it for a present? Yes, it's a photo from my parents.
You can help just by installing the Be My Eyes app,
Brand image.
and we'll notify you when someone needs your help. And if you're in the middle of something, don't worry. Someone else will step in.
That dog is way too old.
So, would you care to be my eyes?
Every time I look at this, I feel like, there are some people who we have to protect because they can't protect themselves, right? And on the other side, we also have to be kind of careful about not just creating a product that looks nice, but also that really works for all people around us. And that's the important part. That's again a little bit sad. So the next video, and the final one, is the story of my life in 40 seconds, and then I'm really done, I promise. Which is more fun. We can do whatever we want on the web. We will never get things perfect, and maybe that's okay. But we can at least try to be better. Oh, no, sorry. That's the story of my life. That's for designers. Oh, that's just sad, just sad. But huge thanks to Parallel Studio for the video. With this in mind, cats, to spice up the cats and meow, and thank you, and I'm looking forward to more conversations later.